Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and right now I am reviewing a lot of devices at the same time. It's getting kind of crazy. So here we have the Moto X Pure Edition, here we have the OnePlus 2, the Galaxy Note 5, and I'm also looking at the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. So the question that I have when reviewing all these devices is, which one would I personally pick? And a lot of you ask me, which one should you personally pick? Should you go for the top of the top? This is insanely priced, around $800. Then we've got the $400 range, and I'm starting to see that all of them perform really great. So on performance-wise, it's hard to pick between one of them. It just feels that as we're progressing with Android, it's harder and harder to choose one that doesn't perform really well. So which one do you choose? That just ends up being the huge question. And to me, I have found out what really matters is which one has the best camera. At the end of the day, I'm going to choose the one, regardless of everything else, I'm going to choose the one that has the best camera for me. So for me, I tend to take a lot of photos indoors, so I really get curious about indoors and low light performance. So what I want to do right now is just to test out the indoor and low light performance on these devices. And hopefully, with showing you how these guys perform, maybe you can decide which one to go for. So let's just go ahead and check that out. So let's start off with talking about the camera specs ever so briefly. Here we have the Moto X. This is a 21 megapixel camera, f2.0 lens, no optical image stabilization as far as I have seen with the specs. Here we have the OnePlus 2. This is a 13 megapixel camera, f2.0 lens, and it's got optical image stabilization, which helps with low light. And then we have the Galaxy Note 5 and also the S6 Edge Plus, the same camera here. We have a 16 megapixel sensor, f1.9 aperture lens, and also optical image stabilization as well, which helps with low light. Talking just a tad bit about the camera interfaces. On the Moto X, we have the most basic of basic interfaces. There are no pro features, although you do have the ability to control focus and exposure with this little bracket here. You also have the ability to turn night mode on. And for some cases, I do recommend using this, and we will see why in just a bit. But otherwise, there are no bells and whistles. Then we have the camera of the OnePlus 2, which I could just make fun of all day because this status bar here gets in the way and obstructs things. This is also a very, very simplistic camera with no pro features at all to be seen. You've got a couple options here, but otherwise you tap to focus and you can control for exposure here as well. And then we have the Galaxy Note 5. One thing I want to show you and note here is that the lens is cracked. It goes right across the camera lens here, and in testing I did figure out that it did affect the image quality a little bit. It's a bit unfortunate. I have no recollection whatsoever as to how this happened, so I have this skin here, and I wish I would have put this little bit on top of the lens beforehand to protect that glass covering, but I didn't, and now I'm regretting it. So let it be known, and a lot of you already know, protect the glass on your camera on Samsung's phones. In terms of the camera interface, this is the camera interface that I like most. We do have a Pro mode in addition to our Auto mode. So just like these two, you can control for the focus, and you can offset your exposure as well. But underneath the Pro mode here, you've got a lot of new features. We now have the ability to choose the shutter speed, which is really great. You can keep it open to 10 seconds, although you would need to have this very, very still, like on a tripod, but it works fabulously for low light. You can control for your ISO, focus, white balance, and here's your exposure compensation right here. And now we also have the ability to save as a RAW file too. So this camera is really quite capable. It's more akin now to what we have on the LG G4. I've been able to get the same low light effects anyhow. So this first set of images are outdoor images, and I'm not going to be focusing on in-sunlight type images, just simply indoor and also low light stuff. I hope to talk about these cameras more fully later on. In this first indoor image, I think that all of the images actually look pretty good. All are sharp, all of them have lots of detail, although I noticed that the Moto X ends up having a bit of a darker image than the other two. While walking around in town taking pictures, I seemed to find that over time that the Moto X constantly took some images that ended up being a bit darker than the others, but still nice and sharp with a lot of detail. Otherwise, they all seem to vary a bit with their own respective white balance and different color renderings. Now for some controlled lighting tests. There's just one lamp on here. All are doing well. All of them look nice and sharp, although I noticed just a little bit of noise that's creeping in on the Moto X. Now we are in controlled, very low lighting, and this is the Moto X. We can see that it really struggles to find a focus. When you turn the night mode on, it brings in a lot of noise and looks very pinkish. With the OnePlus, it's still sharp, but the image is very dark and we have some noise creeping in. And then we have the Galaxy Note 5, and the image looks sharp, and it is the brightest. It's got a good noise reduction filter. This image is not what catches my attention, though. What catches my attention is the Pro mode, and here we have a 2-second exposure, and you can see when it's kept really still how nice and clear and bright it looks. It reminds me of the couple of low light stills I took from the G4 with a couple seconds exposure as well. Nice, bright, sharp, just can't be beat. Most people won't be able to take advantage of this mode, though, unless they have a tripod. That's not something that most people are going to do. Carrying on with outside. First, we see that the Moto X struggles in low light, but then we do have night mode, which does help a little bit, though we do get a pinkish tone, and it looks quite noisy. And then we have the OnePlus 2, which does admirably in comparison, and it looks the most natural. So here we have the Note 5, and it does have the most light, but Samsung does like to embellish, and the colors are just too saturated and too warm here, but it definitely can perform in low light. Here again, the Moto X struggles with the night mode on and off. Then here we have the OnePlus 2 that doesn't look too shabby. It's quite sharp. And then we have the Galaxy Note 5, which does show to have the most light, but unfortunately, because the lens is cracked, we have some reflections in there and loss of contrast. It would look much better without that lens cracked. Then the final nail is put in the poor Moto X's coffin because it just simply can't perform in low light, and that night mode just makes things either pinkish or bluish or incredibly noisy. Here we have the OnePlus 2, which has more light in comparison and isn't a dark and noisy mess. Not bad. And then we have the Galaxy Note 5 here, which has the most light. Please forgive the lens flare. Unfortunately, because that glass covering is cracked, it washes out the image, but it does have the most potential. I think that overall, in all areas of performance for indoor and outdoor, that the Galaxy Note 5 does the best. But the OnePlus 2 really is not so shabby at all. I'm surprised. I didn't expect it to do as well as it does, especially when looking at the Moto X. Unfortunately, it's very hard to purchase, but for $400, I'm quite happy with the camera. And as for the Moto X, as far as I have seen, if you're not someone who's planning on taking some low light shots, you still have a dual tone flash, which does help with low light, and also it does pretty well in indoor settings, and it does pretty well in outdoor settings. So just that one spot in low lighting is where it's just not phenomenal, so it doesn't cut it for me, but some of you might not have any problems with that whatsoever, so this is all I want to say right now with these. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think. These devices I decided to mash up because they're kind of the newest ones that are looming around right now that people seem to be asking me tons of questions about. So let me know what you think and have a good night.